And the bracha I'm talking about is Asher Ga'alanu. So let's just locate ourselves where we are in the Haggadah. We're at the end of Magid. So we've had Kiddush and had the first glass of wine, and we've washed our hands, and we had the karpas, the green vegetable, to keep us going during the long trek to the meal. And then we have Manishtana, the questions from the children, and then Magid starts, Avadim Hayinu, etc., telling the story in one form or another of the Exodus from Egypt. And have Dayenu and Pesach Matzu Maro, a description of the three essential elements of a Seder in the time of the temple, the Paschal Lamb, Matzah, and Maro. And then we have a bit of Hallel. Hallel is split between the first half and the second half of the Seder. And then just before we make the Brei Paragafen on the second glass of wine, the wine we've been sort of holding during Magid, that Magid has been said over, as it were, the second glass of wine, there is this funny bracha which pops up, Asher Ga'alanu. And the question is, well, first of all, what's the bracha mean? And second, what's the bracha's function? So we know, generally speaking, there are three types of bracha. There's brachas hanenin, a bracha we make on an item we're going to benefit from, whether that's eating a fruit or that's smelling spices. Then there's brachas ha-mitzvah, a bracha we make on a commandment. So that, generally speaking, starts Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvah savet tzivanu. We praise God or identify God as the commanding God, and then we say, and has commanded us to do this mitzvah: eat matzah, sit in the sukkah, blow shofar, read Megillah, as you will. And then we have brachas hashevach, which is a bracha in praise of God, somehow stating God's greatness and praising God for what He's done or what He is. So the question is, what is this bracha? What function is it for? So let's read the bracha first of all and translate it. So, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. So blessed are you, our Lord our God, King of the universe. Asher Ga'alanu, who has redeemed us, V'ga'al es Eloseinu, and redeemed our ancestors Mitzrayim from Egypt. Well, that's interesting, the get-go, because what's this redeemed us? And in particular, why redeem us before we say redeemed our ancestors? We're going to see, and people have heard this idea, that important idea, that we all have to consider ourselves as though we ourselves had been redeemed from Egypt. That's what it says in Haggadah. But the order, at least, is peculiar. Then why does it say who redeemed us and redeemed our ancestors? Certainly chronologically, it should be the other way around. Redeemed our ancestors and then redeemed us. So that's an interesting point, and I'll share an idea about that in a second. V'gyanu halayla hazeh, and has brought us to this night, Seder night, Lecho bo matzah umaro, to eat upon it matzah umaro. We've just described the importance of having matzah umaro a few paragraphs ago, and we're going to actually eat the matzah umaro in a short amount of time, just after we have the second glass of wine and then wash our hands. Now, then the bracha changes gear. Kain, Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoseinu. Thus, Lord our God and the God of our ancestors, Yegi'enu l'moadim v'lir galim acherim, bring us to festivals and holidays, other ones. Moadim v'lir galim, is that just a repetition? We will see, or they refer to different holidays? We shall see that and answer that question. Habarim likrasenu l'shalom, smeichim b'vinyan irecha, v'sasim b'varasecha. We're going to get to these holidays, which are going to come to us in peace, rejoicing in the rebuilding of your city, and happy in your service. V'nochal sham min hazvachim min hapsachim, and we're going to eat there from the zvachim, which is a sacrifice, an animal sacrifice made in the temple, min hapsachim, and from the paschal lambs. Now, at this point, in many Haggadot, it says on Motzei Shabbos, you actually change the order. Instead of saying from the sacrifices and from the paschal lamb, we say min hapsachim min hazvachim, from the paschal lamb and from the sacrifices. We will we will see why that might be the case, that we reverse the order. Asher yagia damam akir mizbechecha, which are going to, the blood of which are going to essentially be sprinkled against the side of your altar, because when the Paschal lamb was sacrificed, the blood was collected and thrown against the side of the altar. L'ratzon, for your acceptance. V'nodelecha shir chadash al geulasenu, and then we will sing a new song on our redemption. V'al pedus nafshenu, and on the liberation of our souls. Baruch atah Hashem ka'al Yisrael. Blessed are you, our God, our Lord, who redeemed Israel. So that's the bracha, and then we go straight into Brei Paragafen. Now, the first point I want to make about the structure of these two brachot is the order is interesting. If we have a model in our minds of a long bracha and a short bracha, Brei Paragafen, then you might think of Kiddush. But of course, in Kiddush, the order is different. First we say Brei Paragafen, and then we say the long bracha on Kiddush Hayom, on the sanctity of the day, whether that day is Shabbos or Yom Tov. Also, Havdalah. First we make a Brei Paragafen, and then spices, and then the candle, and then we make the long bracha on Havdalah, distinguishing between the holy and the mundane. That, of course, is the opinion of Hillel in the Mishnah in Brachot, that first you make bracha over the wine, then you make a bracha over the day. This is the reverse order. First we have a long bracha, which discusses a theme, and then we have a short bracha on Brei Paragafen. So the order does not correspond to Kiddush and Havdalah, the sort of known order, the accepted order for a bracha which contains, or double bracha, both on wine and on some sort of mitzvah activity, or some sort of ritual purpose. That's the first one I want to make. Now let's actually go through the bracha phrase by phrase with the Abu Draham. He was a Spanish Rishon, which means to say a authority working between about 1000 and 1500. He was flourishing in the middle of the 14th century, 1340 or so, and he was a student of the Torah, Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher. So Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher's father was the Rosh. Rav Asher ben Yechiel, he was the major authority in Germany. He flees Germany under persecution and goes to Spain, where things were a bit better in the late 13th, early 14th century, and brings a lot of German learning to Spain. And his son, Yaakov ben Asher, is the author of the Torah, which for the first time organizes all practical laws still relevant today into 4 different volumes, major volumes, and that forms the basis of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch takes its format from the Torah, but the Torah is much more discursive and has many more lengthy, learned investigations into particular topics. So the Torah, very, very important, sort of combination of German and Spanish learning of the middle of the Rishonic period, and the Abu Draham is his student. So let's go through what the Abu Draham has to say. So first of all, this question of Ga'alanu v'Ga'al Esav Asenu, who redeemed us and redeemed our ancestors. The Abu Draham says this: "V'Haggadah shelo Esav Asenu bilvad." This is not talking, or we don't talk just about our ancestors being redeemed. The Haggadah also talks about our own personal redemption. Ga'al HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God redeemed both our ancestors and ourselves. Had we not been redeemed, the Haggadah says we would still be slaves in the land of Egypt. Even us it redeemed, as God redeemed, as it says, and he took us out from there. That's what it says in the Torah in Devarim in Deuteronomy. The Fichach, his kir kan gulasenu the gulas avasenu Mitzrayim, and therefore it mentions here both our redemption and the redemption of our ancestors, echoing a theme in the Haggadah and echoing a pasuk, a verse in the Torah itself. I saw in the Oznaim La Torah by Rav Sorotskin, he says, why does it say redeemed us before it says redeemed our ancestors? Because we have to place ourselves in that mental position. We have to, if the point of the Haggadah is to regard ourselves as having been personally redeemed, that's one of the tasks of Seder night. And therefore, we do that, we achieve that by saying, first and foremost, we've been redeemed, not anyone else, putting that foot forward first. And now, Vigyanu, and has brought us to this night. Zehu Kamasha Omrim, Vigyanu Lizman Hazer. Now, we're used to the phrase like that in Shechianu. We say Shechianu, Vikimanu, Vigyanu Lizman Hazer, who has allowed us to live and has sustained us and has brought us to this time. So what we seem to have in this point of the bracha is a version of Shechianu. Vim Tomar, so the Budraham says, if you're going to say, Kiven she berach Shechianu, lama varach kan higyanu alayla hazeh. If we have a Shechianu, which we do, we have Shechianu in Kiddush. Why, if we already said Shechianu, are we now going to come along and say Higyanu halayla hazeh, who's brought us this night, and performed the same function? V'yesh lomar, and here's a possible answer. Mitnei shehu rotze lomar, ken Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu, higyanu l'moadim shehu lashon bakasha hala'asid, ama v'hyanu halayla hazeh. It's a setup. It's and that enables us to say, just as you brought us to this night, so may you bring us to a future night when the temple will be restored and we can bring the Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, as well as the Matzah Maror. So really, it's not, this phrase is not here for its own sake, because Shechianu has already achieved what this phrase would achieve. It's there to get us to the next thought, which is we want to be at a quote-unquote proper Seder, where we also have the Paschal Lamb. Lechol ba matzah maror, to eat upon it matzah maror, al shem, because the verse says, v'achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh, because the verse in Shemot in Exodus says you should eat matzah and maror and the Paschal Lamb all together. Those three elements are shouldn't be taken apart. Matzah these days is still a biblical mitzvah. We still fulfill a biblical mitzvah by eating matzah. But in fact, you only fulfill a biblical mitzvah of eating maror if it's eaten with the Paschal Lamb. No Paschal Lamb, the mitzvah of maror is now rabbinic and not anymore biblical. And of course, the position of Hillel, who wants us to eat the matzah and the maror together, because originally the matzah and the maror and the Pesach were all eaten in a sort of shawarma type affair, and he wants us to recreate that because the point was to eat these things all together. Nevadim v'leir galim. God, we want God to bring us to festivals and festivals. We want to distinguish between those two types of festivals. The Moadim elu Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. The Moadim that it's talking about is Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. V'leir galim elu Pesach u'Shvuos u'Sukkos. And the regalim means what we call the Shalosh regalim, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. By the way, people think that they're called the regalim because they're the foot festivals, they're the pilgrimage festivals. That's not the case. It's regal in terms of ragil, in terms of regular. There's a cycle. There's a regular cycle. You go round and round the cycle. Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. They're regalim in that way. V'afarpi. Shehem b'chlam moadim, and even though regalim are really also, they come under the general heading, the general category of moadim, remez ba'omro regalim yezachinu la'alos Yerushalayim b'chol regel v'regel mishlotan. We want to make particular reference to regalim because we want to restore the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and so they get their own special mention. Also, it seems to me, of course, Pesach is one of the regalim, so maybe it deserves its own mention because it is. That's its own specific category. Smechim b'tzion irecha. We want to rejoice in Zion, your city. V'sosim b'vadasecha, and be happy in your service. Al shem ki nichem Hashem Zion, nachem kol charban aseha. Sosim smechim yimsa ba toda v'kol zimra. We want to rejoice in God's service. We want to be comforted by God in Jerusalem. We want to have some respite from all of the destruction. We want to rejoice and be happy and give thanks and the voice of praise to God to be heard all over again. It's a prayer for the It's a prayer for the restoration of Jerusalem and all that entail. And we want to eat at that point in time from the zvachim, from the sacrifices, from the Paschal lamb. And there are manuscripts, or there are versions of this text which say from the Paschal lamb and from the other sacrifices. We say that text on a Saturday night. But this is a mistake. This is a mistake because there's actually a particular order in which you're supposed to eat the chagiga, which is a sacrifice brought on every single of the chagim, and the Pesach. Because the Pesach is supposed to be eaten when one is basically full, and therefore has a really luxurious character because you don't need it for basic food. So you have the chagiga first, you sacrifice an animal for the chagiga, the chag sacrifice. You eat that first, and then you have the Pesach at the end when you're already pretty full. The Afikomen serves that function these days. We have the meal, and then we have Afikomen at the end, which represents the Pesach. And therefore the order is correct. Min hazvachim, min hapsachim. You eat first the zvachim, the zevach, the chagiga, the festival sacrifice. First you eat that, and then afterwards you eat the Pesach. That's the order in which we eat on Seder night. So he says it's just wrong to have it the way around. So I've got a couple of comments to make about this a view of the Abu Draham. First of all, it's been pointed out that there is an occasion when you would eat the psachim for the zvachim, and that is b'motzei Shabbos, when the first night of Seder is a Friday night. When the first night of Seder is a Saturday night. I'm sorry. One can sacrifice the Pesach on Shabbos. The Pesach is Docha Shabbos. It's more important halachically to sacrifice the Pesach, so it overrides certain Shabbos restrictions. But that's not true of the Chagiga, because in fact you can bring the Chagiga for quite a long time, all the way through the Yom Tov. So although there's a special regulation, you should eat the Pesach when you're full. When Seder night is a Saturday night, the Chagiga was not sacrificed. People just ate the Pesach. And so therefore on a Pesach where the first night was Motzei Shabbos, the order you'd eat those sacrifices was indeed the Pesach first, and the Chagiga, which you're still obliged to bring subsequently, but which you can't sacrifice on Shabbos. So it's right. But there is a more sort of technical answer. If you saw in a manuscript, Beis Mem Shin, Mina Psachim Mina Zvachim, you might think that meant B'motzei Shabbos. But there's a suggestion, it doesn't mean that at all. It means the Mishnah Shebe Gemara. Because the way this text appears in the Mishnah has the order of most days of the week, which is Min HaPsachim, Min HaZvachim, Min HaPsachim, the Zevach first. But when the Mishnah, oddly enough, crops up in the Gemara, when it's quoted in the Gemara, it reverses the order. Min HaPsachim, Min HaZvachim. So what may have started as a little note to say to people, the text we are using is the text of the Mishnah as it appears in the Mishnah itself. But you should know that when the Mishnah appears in the Gemara, it has a different order. And that, the Mishnah Sheba Gemara, Beis Mem Shin, was misread as B'motzei Shabbos on Saturday night. That's another suggestion. Kedem Pesach, shiur nechal al haSeder. Sorry. V'nodecha shiur chadash. And then we're going to sing a new song, L'Asid Lavo. That refers to the future, the Messianic era. Al Pedus Nafshenu, the liberation of our souls. Zog Ula, Gulas Mitzrayim. This refers to the redemption from Egypt. Shneimar, as the verse says, Kaper l'Amecha Yisrael Asher Padisa Hashem. So atone for your people Israel, whom you have liberated. The use of the phrase Padisa. So that's the same word Padus. He limos HaMashiach maskirim shteyem. And in the days of the Messiah, we're actually going to mention both. We're going to mention both Pesach and the Messianic liberation. K'mo she'amarnu, Yimei Chayecha Ha'olam Hazeh, You will recall that in the text of Haggadah, it says you should mention the exodus from Egypt all the days of your life, and there's a dispute. Does that mean, does all the days of your life mean night and day, or does it mean the present world, as it were, and the world of the Messianic era? And so the Avraham is saying it seems to mean, he's explaining this verse to mean the Messianic era. We will still talk about the Exodus in the Messianic era. The problem with that explanation is that we don't accept halakhically the view that Kol Yimei Chayecha, all the days of your life, does refer to the days of the Mashiach, because we fulfill the mitzvah of remembering the Exodus day and night through the Shema. Oh, we fill the mitzvah of recalling the Exodus through the Shema, and we say the Shema day and night, because we seem to hold by the opinion that Kol Yimei Chayecha refers to day and night. So it's interesting that he believes that in this context we also fulfill the opinion that we will remember the Exodus also in the times of the Mashiach. That he might think that Kol Yimei Chayecha in general refers to the Shema, which is the day and night, but it has a second meaning when it comes to this. When it comes to Seder night, though, even though the Shema may not be said anymore, or may not include reference to the Exodus, there will still be Seder night even in the times of the Mashiach, and we will still talk about the Exodus from Egypt even when the Mashiach has come. And then finally, Baruch Atah Hashem, Ga'al Yisrael, Perush Mitzrayim, and the final bracha refers to the Exodus from Egypt. We have briefly touched upon the Messianic redemption when we say Noda L'cha Shir Chadash, when we talk about this new song we're going to sing in the future, and we talk about bringing the sacrifices again. But when it comes to the end of the bracha, we return to talking about the Exodus. We're no longer talking about the final Messianic redemption. So that's what the Avraham tells us about the bracha, and I think that's very useful. Now, let's have a look at what the a couple of important commentators say about what this bracha is doing. What is its purpose, and what is its function? So let's first look at the Shibbolei Haleket. This is a work by a Talmid Chacham, a Rav in Rome in the 13th century, 1210 to 1280s approximately. He learned in Germany, which is a very important centre of learning in that century. But he was principally based in Rome. And he writes a sefer called the Shibbolei Haleket, Ears of Gleaning, and it's about ritual elements of Jewish life. So he gives an explanation of what this bracha is doing. Now, if we can look at the bracha, it's not a bracha sanen, it's not a bracha on having benefit, like eating an apple or drinking a glass of wine. So is it brachas hashevach? Is it a blessing of praise of God, or brachas ha-mitzvah, a blessing on doing a mitzvah? Well, it doesn't look like a brachas ha-mitzvah. There's no Asher Shem Tzivanu. There's no reference to you have commanded us to do this and you've commanded us to do that. It does say you've brought us to eat matzah maror, but it doesn't say that you have commanded us so to do. And the whole tenor seems to be rather more of asking, of requesting, and of celebrating their future redemption. So first look, it looks like a brachas hashevach. So let's see if that's what the Shibbolei Haleket agrees with. He says this: "U'mitzvahs Haggadah hi mitzvah aseh, v'aisa tuna bracha." The mitzvah of Haggadah, the mitzvah of Magid, of discussing the Exodus from Egypt on the first night of Pesach, is a positive commandment of the Torah. Just like eating matzah or blowing shofar, it's a positive mitzvah of the Torah to recount the Exodus on Seder night. So maybe that's what this bracha is doing. Maybe this bracha is a brachas mitzvah on that mitzvah. Ella, shiv teres b'kriyas shema, hare kriyas shema, te'una bracha, lefanecha recha. But in fact, we've done this through the Shema. As I said a few minutes ago, we always recount the Exodus from Egypt in the Shema, and we say the Shema on Seder night as well, in Mariv, which happens before Seder. And in fact, the Shema, when it comes in Mariv, has brachot before it and brachot after it. So we fulfilled everything. We've done the mitzvah, and we made brachot on the mitzvah. So it can't be serving this function. Or Yesh Lemar, here's an alternative suggestion, says the Shibbolei Haleket. Asher galanu, hiberchas hagada, shari yeshba haskaras matzah umaror upesach. There is a specific mitzvah on Seder night, not just to recount the Exodus, but to recount the Exodus while mentioning the three active mitzvot, the three mitzvot involving an item, in this case eating, matzah, maror, and the Pesach, which we've just done just before the first part of Hallel. We've just described Pesach, matzah, and maror. V'isman habayis, when the temple stood, hayam makdimim v'omrim v'gyanu halayla hazeh lechol bo Pesach, matzah, morim. And the bracha in temple times was different. We talk about coming to eat matzah maror. In temple times, they talked about coming to eat Pesach, matzah, umaror. V'hari yeshba tshuva l'chol ha'shelos. And this answers all the questions. So what the Shibari HaLeket thinks this is a birchas HaMitzvah. It's a blessing on performing a mitzvah of a very unusual type, which is done just before we fulfill the mitzvah itself of that type of eating, or rather it bridges the two elements of the mitzvah. There's the mitzvah of Magid, of talking about the Exodus, which we've just completed, and we're about to start the mitzvahs of eating the ritual items on Seder, and the bridging mitzvah, bridging bracha is Asher Galanu. It links the talking and the eating. We just have to get the Brit Pragofen out of the way, and we get the Al Teshadayim out of the way, the washing which has to be done. But if you take those two to one, put those two to one side, this is the bracha which links talking over, about, in the presence of Pesach, Matzah, Maror, and actually eating the Pesach, Matzah, Maror. So it is in fact a bracha mitzvah. What's it doing at the end? Why isn't it at the beginning? We usually make a bracha on a mitzvah before we do it. You make a bracha al Nesilas Lulav before you shake the Abra Minim. So what's it doing at the end? Well, there are certain mitzvah which have a bracha at the end. Hallel has a bracha at the end. Megillah, Kriyas Torah, Pesach de Zimra, Yishtabach is at the end of Pesach de Zimra. So there are certain mitzvot where we make a bracha at the beginning, yes, but also at the end. So maybe Asher Galanu is of that type. So the Shemini Leket tells us it's a Birchas HaMitzvah. Let's have a look at, finally, at the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan is Rav Yechiel Michal Halevi Epstein, writes an entire compendium of Jewish law, or practical Jewish law, in the late 19th century, and it's still very, very influential, much more involved and discursive than the Mishnah Berurah, which became more of a practical guide, but the Aruch HaShulchan is still a very, very important, influential work. So he says this, Kasav HaTor, the Tor, who we noted was a teacher of the Abu Draham we first explored. So he writes this, Eino Varech Shasa Nisim. We don't say Shasa Nisim. There's no bracha of Shasa Nisim Navaseinu anywhere on Pesach or Seder night. It doesn't crop up. Why? Visha Asid Le'omro B'Haggadah. Because we're going to say it in the Haggadah. Ad Kandashono. And that's the end of what he has to say. Well, there is no Shasa Nisim in the Haggadah. So what's the Torah talking about? Koloma, that is to say, Tekashen Shavarchim B'Chanukah Upurim Shasa Nisim. Just as we say Shasa Nisim on Chanukah and Purim, before we light the candles and before we read the Megillah, Pshita, it's obvious, Sheba Pesach Hayelavarach Kain. Elafish Ba'Gada Animus Saprim Hanisim V'Niflas. V'Chakach Mevarchim Berchas Asher Ga'alanu. Mela Dezehu Keverchas Shasa Nisim V'Tarti Lamali. So he says this, it's obvious that we should have some sort of Shasa Nisim on Seder night. It's at least the equal of Chanukah and Purim, which are just rabbinic festivals. And therefore, what do? We discuss the Exodus on Seder night, that's Magid, and we discuss all the miracles and the wonders that God wrought for our ancestors. And after that, what do? We say, Asher Galanu. And that, it seems, in this first thought of the Aruch HaShulchan, it seems that this Asher Galanu is the bracha of Shasa Nisim of Seder night. That is its function. It forms the function of Shasa Nisim on that's normally done on Chanukah and Purim, that it is the Shasanisim of Seder night. And you don't need two. I don't need to have two Shasanisims, and therefore the first one disappears. Very good. That's the first thought. Nice idea. Not a Berachas Mitzvah at all, it's Berachas Shevach. Just like Shasanisim Avasenu Bayim Hazman Hazer is a blessing of praise of God, so too, this is a blessing of praise of God. Splendid. But the Aruch HaShulchan goes on because he's not convinced. B'Shem Maharil, but he says the name of the Maharil, an early Ashkenaz Rishon, very important in terms of the liturgy. Ra'isi tam mipnei shehi mitzvah haksuva b'Torah be'im varachin shasanisim ela a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. He says the Maharil gives the view that one never says a shasanisim on a biblical mitzvah, only on a rabbinic mitzvah. It's not happenstance. Anytime you have shasanisim is Chanukah and Purim, because these are the rabbinic festivals. These are festivals which mark a miracle in the way that the rabbis told us to mark a miracle, and they attract this bracha of Shasanisim, which is not true of a biblical festival. But it seems that this explanation is not a good one. Dachi perusho, dinei kol habrachos tiknu rabbanon, v'lo shach bracha ela levarach hakadosh baruch hu asher tzivanu mitzvah zo, k'mo lechol matzah, leishav sukkah, liskol shofar. Aval lo lasos me'etzah mitzvah bracha. Okay, we'll pause there. So he said he doesn't quite like this idea that there's just a technical point. The Shasanisim does not apply to a biblical mitzvah or biblical miracle. So he has a different solution. He says, we've already explained that the brachot which the rabbis instituted are only relevant in order to bless God, who commanded us to perform a certain mitzvah. For example, to eat matzah, or to sit in a sukkah, or to blow shofar. But this is the important point. A mitzvah, a bracha never does the mitzvah itself. One never achieves a biblical commandment by making a bracha. One achieves a biblical commandment by doing something upon which a bracha is made. Now, I suppose the exception to that is Birkat HaMazon, but it says v'achalta v'savata v'rachta. It tells us specifically to make a bracha, but any other mitzvah is not achieved by making a bracha. It has to be achieved in another way if we're talking about a biblical mitzvah. And since we are commanded by the Torah itself to recount, to discuss the miracles of the Exodus on this night, by mitzvahs aseh, and it's a positive commandment of the Torah, how could we say the bracha of Shasanisim? Because that would be to do the mitzvah. If you say, thank you, God, who did miracles for our ancestors at that time in these days, that itself would perform the mitzvah. And the Aruch HaShulchan wants to say that's not the way you perform biblical mitzvah. You perform biblical mitzvah by doing it, and you make a bracha on it, but you don't achieve the mitzvah by making the bracha. Now, he's taken issue with the Maharil, but maybe he's just explained the Maharil in a different way. When it says you don't make a bracha on a mitzvah deraisa of this sort, or Shasanis on a mitzvah deraisa, he's saying this is the reason why. He's saying that the Maharil has not been properly understood. This is the way to understand the Maharil properly. And therefore, he goes on to say, one would not make a Shasanisim, that would be like saying Haggadah twice. We've already done the mitzvah of saying the Haggadah, of recounting the Exodus. Why would we repeat it through the means of a mitzvah? So he's saying it's not a Shasanisim type mitzvah. It's not performing the function of Shasanisim. That really the bracha matzah of Asher Ga'alanu, this bracha, the essence is on the eating of the matzah and the maror. K'moshe omrim, v'gyanu halayla hazeh lachol bo matzah maror. The purpose of the bracha says talks about bringing us to this night when we're going to eat matzah and maror. Avashasa nisim stehu ikar mitzvah sipui sis mitzrayim. But if we were to say shasa nisim, that would be to itself to form the action, and only the action of talking about leaving Egypt, not about linking leaving Egypt with eating matzah and maror, and in temple times the Pesach as well. Braka mitzvah derabanan harshus biadam v'lo b'deraisa. And again, to echo the Maharil, this would work for a rabbinic mitzvah, but would not work for a biblical mitzvah. And therefore, the Aruch HaShulchan also concludes that it's a bracha on a mitzvah. We're sort of in the middle of doing a mitzvah, Magid, talking about the Exodus, followed by eating Pesach matzah maror. Pesach only occurs in temple times, and therefore we make this bracha as a sort of linking bracha between the two. This is in some ways echoes the Shivoli Halekhet as well. That we have this bracha which is done in the middle. It's not at the end of anything. It's done in the middle of certain things. That's rather like these days Netilas Yadayim. When we wash our hands, we're in the middle of the mitzvah. We can still make the bracha because it's not quite over yet. Asher Galanu is put in the middle of this complex mitzvah, which includes both talking and also eating. So it turns out that despite there's no Asher Gdushan Mitzvah Tzivanu, which we would normally expect in a Ruach HaSam mitzvah, according to the Shivoli Halekhet and the Aruch HaShulchan, that's what we're talking about, and we are talking about this complex mitzvah, which is unique to Seder, which is not just to discuss the Exodus, which happens every night, but to discuss the Exodus, which along with matzah and maror, and maybe that's what the Abu Dram is talking about. The mitzvah that will survive into the future is not the simple talking about the Exodus, it's the talking about the Exodus with matzah and maror. So I hope that will give some extra food for thought for Seder this year, for Magid and matzah and maror, and also the Asher Galanu. I wish everyone a very safe and healthy and enjoyable Chag HaMatzos. Happy Pesach.
Shukran, Rabbi. I will send you the recording shortly.
Thank you very much. All the best.